In the late 1960s, a scientist named John B. Calhoun began one of the most unsettling experiments in behavioral science. He created a perfect enclosure for mice: unlimited food, water, shelter, no predators, no danger. The danger icons that once surrounded them began to disappear, one by one. What could possibly go wrong? Calhoun called it the utopia, a perfect world contained within a transparent dome. Inside, mice thrived. The dome shimmered with possibility. Food was abundant, relationships formed, the rainbow colors of hope painted the glass walls. For a moment, everything was perfect. Something changed. A small crack appeared in paradise, just one tiny fracture at first. The mouse looked up, sensing something wrong. The perfect world began to dim. That crack would become a wound that never healed. Slowly, the signs of collapse multiplied. Empty shelves appeared where abundance once lived. Drought icons spread. Famine markers emerged. The ground that was once green turned brown and cracked. The mice grew sad. Their ears drooped, but this was only the beginning. Then it happened. Paradise collapsed entirely. The dome shattered into falling fragments. Disaster icons, death, fire, radiation, flood, chaos surrounded the mice. Lightning struck randomly between them. The mouse raised its arms in despair, tears streaming down its face. Paradise was lost. But how? Why? The population graph was supposed to show growth, not destruction. Here's the paradox that haunted Calhoun. Resources were rising, food was plentiful, space existed, yet the population collapsed. The graph told the story: while resources climbed steadily upward, the population plummeted. They crossed each other like ships passing in the night. This wasn't a story of scarcity, it was a story of something far more sinister. Calhoun stood before his failed experiment, a giant question mark looming over everything. What went wrong? He had provided everything a mouse could need, yet they were destroying themselves. The scientist pointed upward, searching for answers in the darkness. This question would consume him for the rest of his career. When you look at the survival checklist, food, water, shelter, medicine, everything was checked. Complete, perfect. Every box filled, every need met. The colony had everything required for thriving life. So why did they fail to thrive? Within the dome, a mouse city emerged. Buildings, pathways, a miniature civilization. The transparency of the dome allowed observation of everything. This was supposed to be the model of a perfect society. Instead, it became a warning. Here's what Calhoun discovered. Beneath the thriving surface, something dark was spreading. As the city grew above ground, an invisible collapse spread beneath. The foundations were failing, even as the towers reached higher. Success above, destruction below. The shadow grew while the lights shone brighter. First, progress was undeniable. The green arrow rose steadily, numbers climbed. The colony expanded, every metric pointed upward. Growth was exponential. Success was measured in population increases and thriving numbers, but progress has a shadow side. The colony spread outward like ripples in water. From a single nest, tunnels extended in all directions. More mice, more structures, more complexity. The expansion seemed endless. With each ripple, the territory grew. With each generation, the borders pushed further. Growth was the measure of success. The graph didn't just rise, it shot upward. Like a rocket launching, the population climbed with stunning speed. Every measurement showed acceleration. More mice meant more life, more possibility, more future, or so it seemed. For a time, the scientists celebrated. Results were positive. Checkmarks filled the reports. The experiment was a success by every metric. Confetti fell, victory was declared. But celebration can blind us to what we're actually building. The split screen tells the story of modern society. On one side, resources, abundance, checked boxes, everything provided. On the other side, a question mark. We have more resources than ever before in human history, yet something remains unanswered. What are we missing? What cannot be checked off a list? The pathways tell their own story. At first, tunnels were orderly, efficient, logical. Then they began to tangle. Routes crossed randomly. Some paths broke entirely. Mice wandered in confusion, trapped by their own infrastructure. Complexity without purpose. Movement without direction. The paths that once led somewhere now led nowhere. The family tree tells the tale of social death. At its peak, branches flourished with mice. Connections multiplied. Generations overlapped. Then the branches began to die. One by one, connections severed. Family ties that once defined existence became scars instead of lifelines. The tree died from the top down. Each lost branch a death in the social fabric. Then came the snap. Social connections that once held firm suddenly broke. Lines that connected mice to their community severed with visible sparks. One by one, mice found themselves isolated from the networks that gave them identity. The community that sustained them became a memory. Each mouse retreated into its own bubble. A transparent shield separated them from others. The bubble was protective, but also isolating. Inside, the mouse was safe from others, but also cut off from community. Others existed beyond the barrier, but they were unreachable. Loneliness became the universal condition. When connection did occur, it came with violence. Red lightning arced between mice randomly, striking without warning. Fear spread. Aggression replaced interaction. The lightning wasn't natural disaster, it was social contamination. Connection had become danger. Without social connection, mice turned inward. Obsessive grooming became the primary activity. Hours spent cleaning, preening, perfecting themselves. No social interaction, only self-focus. The mouse that once groomed others now groomed only itself. Narcissism became the replacement for community. Daily life became an endless loop. Eat, groom, sleep, repeat. No purpose beyond the cycle. No forward motion, only rotation. The clock became meaningless, each day identical to the last. Routine replaced meaning. The mice walked in circles even when standing still. Some mice walked away from conflict entirely. The crossed swords, aggression, violence, competition left behind as they departed, choosing isolation over combat, refusing to fight, refusing to engage, walking away from society's battles to find peace in solitude. Even in isolation, the heart remembered connection. The broken heart between mice showed what was lost. A bond that once connected two beings now lay in fragments. Pieces fell away with each passing moment. The ability to connect, to love, to bond, to belong was dying. The darkness. Some mice became perfect. The spotlight fell on ideal specimens, physically flawless, behaviorally correct. They stood in a row, beautiful and empty. The darkness around them was not just absence of light, it was the absence of life. Perfection under the spotlight, emptiness everywhere else. One mouse sparkled differently from all the rest, shining bright while others stayed gray, but the sparkle created distance, not connection. The bright mouse floated above the community, unable to return, unable to connect. Brilliant and alone, different and therefore isolated, sparkling in the darkness. The streets became silent. Where once mice walked and mice lived, now nothing moved. Empty cobblestones stretched between empty houses. Leaves fell on paths no one walked. The city that once thrived now held only absence. Silence became the loudest sound. The emptiness, a single leaf fell. One small piece of nature continuing its cycle while everything else stopped. The tiny mouse below looked up, watching something so simple carry such weight. Life continued its small rituals even as the larger world collapsed. The social links that once connected everyone faded one by one. Lines that once glowed with connection became transparent, then invisible. Mouse after mouse became isolated. The web of community unraveled thread by thread. With each lost link, the whole became less. Then the Barbies stopped. The timeline shows the progression from many baby mice to almost none. Reproduction ceased. The future stopped being created, an aging population with no replacement. The colony had become a terminal state, a system that could not regenerate. The graph plateaued, but at the worst possible level. Not growth, not stability, but terminal decline. The line flatlined at zero. No births, no recovery, no escape. The plateau continued endlessly. Population that could not rebuild, a society that could not renew, death by demographic collapse. Finally, the fall came, not gradually but sharply. The high point of population met the ground with catastrophic impact. Warnings read against the fall, mice below the cliff of collapse, the moment when everything that was built finally broke. The city faded while the mice remained. Infrastructure became ghostly, buildings transparent and dissolving, but the mice, the individuals, stayed solid. The society that held them together was disappearing, even as they continued to exist. Civilization dissolving, people persisting, the container failing while the contents remained. A final spiral, everything collapsed into the center. The city spun around a dark vortex, structures and mice pulled inward. The whirlpool consumed everything, spinning faster, falling deeper, until the center swallowed the edges. A society destroying itself by its own complexity. The gears of society broke. These machines that once drove progress now stood frozen and fractured. Teeth missing, axles cracked, connections severed. The machinery of civilization ground to a halt. What once moved the world now only marked its failure. The social ladder broke. Rungs cracked and fell away. Mice climbed only to find the step beneath them crumbling. Progress became impossible. Movement became danger. The structure that once allowed climbing now only allowed falling. Each rung tested, each step uncertain. And in a final vision, Calhoun saw the mouse transform into something else. The mouse became human. The experiment was not about mice, it was about us. Each stage of the mouse's collapse was a mirror of human potential. The mouse that became human showed us our own future if we repeat their path. What does this mean for humanity? The giant question mark hangs over us all. We look up at it, searching for answers we cannot find. The mouse experiment was contained, controlled. But humanity's experiment is happening in the open, without a dome, without observation from outside. We are both the mouse and the scientist. We have built cities of abundance. Gardens grow on buildings. Fountains flow freely. Technology solves problems daily. We have more resources, more comfort, more safety than any generation before. The futuristic city of our dreams has arrived, and with it, perhaps, the seeds of the same collapse. Trophies become question marks. The achievements we celebrate, the cups, the records, the victories, reveal their emptiness over time. What seemed like triumph becomes mystery. The question mark replaces the trophy not because success failed, but because success alone cannot answer what we are really asking. Direction fades as we progress. The compass that once pointed clearly north now spins without purpose. We move faster, but toward what? The darkness ahead is not evil, it's unknown. We have the tools to navigate, but lack the destination that gives navigation meaning. Four foundations hold everything. Meaning gives purpose to action. Purpose gives direction to choice. Family gives identity to individuals. Community gives belonging to the lonely. Remove any block, and everything above begins to fall. These are not luxuries, they are load-bearing walls of human existence. Stand at a crossroads, our perfect city facing unknown paths. One direction leads to continued growth. Another leads to quiet collapse. Another leads to transformation we cannot imagine. The mist ahead hides what each path contains. Our choices will determine which path we take. In the end, we are all that lone figure, small in infinite white space, facing the giant question mark on the horizon. We walk toward uncertainty with every step. We cannot see what lies ahead. We cannot be certain that any path leads somewhere better. But we walk anyway, because standing still is also a choice. And it leads only to the same place we've always been. The conclusion, why this matters to you, the Calhoun Effect, is not about mice. It's about what happens when we build societies that provide for every physical need while neglecting every social and psychological one. It's about what happens when growth becomes the only metric and meaning becomes an afterthought. It's about what happens when we confuse comfort with fulfillment and abundance with happiness. The mice had everything they needed to survive, but they forgot how to live. They forgot how to connect, to bond, to belong. They became isolated, aggressive, meaningless, and then they vanished. We are building the same trap. We have more food than ever, but we eat alone. We have more connection technology than ever, but we are more isolated than ever. We have more entertainment than ever, but we find less meaning. We optimize for every metric except the ones that matter most. So what can we do? First, recognize the pattern. The Calhoun Effect is not destiny, it's warning. Second, prioritize connection over consumption. Third, build meaning into daily life, not as a luxury, but as a necessity. Fourth, create communities. Not just networks. Mouse City collapsed because mice forgot they were mice, social beings who needed each other to be whole. We are making the same mistake. We are trading community for convenience, connection for content, meaning for metrics. The question mark hangs over us all. But questions are not problems, they are invitations. The Calhoun Effect invites us to look at what we're building and ask, is this the world we actually want? Is this the future that will make us happy? Is this the meaning we're searching for? Perhaps the most important lesson is this: a perfect world is not enough. We need not just survival, but meaning, not just abundance, but connection, not just resources, but relationships. Calhoun Effect is a mirror. What we see in it depends on what we're willing to change.